whenever I have a lesson that I'm giving, I make sure that lesson has more than just learning, because language is the portrayal of culture. So that means just by teaching language is not enough if they are not aware of the culture.
For any student, one of the most integral parts of learning a language is the study of and experience with the culture or cultures associated with that language. As we continue the adventure of learning a language other than English, you'll see students exploring the three main components of culture: products, practices, and perspectives. And you'll see how some of the most successful language teachers in Texas bring the components of culture alive in their classrooms, and how they incorporate the program goal of cultures into their daily lesson plans. Any examination of how language is taught in Texas begins with a mention of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for languages other than English. The TEKS for LOTE are the standards which describe what all students should know and be able to do at various stages within the LOTE discipline. These standards are organized around 5 program goals, often referred to by educators as the 5 C's. First and foremost is communication. In LOTE classrooms, students are striving to use a second language, and communication is the vehicle language learners use to become proficient. The other 4 goals stem from the use of the target language in the classroom. Students learn about the cultures associated with their second language and gain valuable insight into perspectives of the people of that country or region. Learning a second language, students make connections with other subject areas and connect to access information in the target language. Students who make the comparisons between their second language and culture and their first language and culture develop insight into the nature of all languages and cultures. Finally, students are encouraged to take their second language out into the community, to use it with neighbors here at home or in communities abroad. It is the acceptance of and implementation of these 5 program goals into daily lesson plans that Texas educators believe is a key to obtaining advanced proficiency for all language learners.
¿Cuáles productos y servicios ofrecen la compañía? Nuestra compañía es básicamente...
Clearly, communication skills are the primary focus of language study. Through the communication goal, students develop the skills necessary to master the content of the other 4 program goals. These skills include listening, speaking, reading and writing, as well as viewing and showing. Communicative proficiency derives from control of 3 modes of communication: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. Students need practice in all 3 types of communication in order to satisfy their most commonly expressed reason for taking any language class: to learn to communicate.
The first thing that I do when I do my lesson plans is think about the communication that's going to take place between the students. At this level, interpersonal communication is the most important, that they be able to give the information that they want to give, and more importantly, they receive the information that they want to receive. So that's where I start. From that point, I want to bring in culture. I want to bring in new vocabulary. I want to bring in a connection with students that they don't have already, that being with students who don't speak the target language, in this case Spanish. So everything revolves around that interpersonal communication. If at some point then we can get to other kinds of communication, interpretive communication, communication of presentation type, that's good too. But at this point, it's the interpersonal communication that's most important. It's what they want to do. They want to learn how to speak Spanish.
The primary mode of communication is the interpersonal mode, where there is a direct exchange of communication between individuals, either listeners and speakers or readers and writers.
Tenemos compañías en más de 90 países, incluyendo Norteamérica, África, Francia, Alemania.
At Churchill High School in San Antonio, these students are involved in a mock job fair. They're demonstrating proficiency in the interpersonal mode of communication, speaking and listening. This mode of communication requires active negotiation of meaning between the individuals and calls for a natural pattern of adjustment and clarification in order to be successful. Another form of interpersonal communication occurs between writers and readers when both writer and reader have access to one another. In Heidi Kirby's German 2 class at Cinco Ranch High School near Houston, her students are emailing students in Germany. The two groups of students are thousands of miles apart, but utilizing the technology available in today's language classroom, they are able to be e-pals in their target language. Using their computers, the students are communicating in the interpersonal mode. They are developing the skills of reading and at the same time developing the skills of writing. Another mode of communication is the interpretive mode. In this form of communication, the communicative source, the speaker or writer, is not present. The listeners or readers must determine for themselves the meaning of what is being communicated, using the skills of listening and reading. At Cambridge Elementary in the Alamo Heights School District, these first-grade immersion students receive a full dose of all three modes of communication in the target language right from the first day. The interpretive mode occurs not only as students listen to their teacher, but also during reading time. For these youngsters, full comprehension of what they're reading is still a ways down the road, but their interpretive skills are already being enhanced, and they're developing viewing skills, using pictures to help interpret what they see and read. In today's LOTE classroom, more advanced students can take their interpretive skills to the Internet. In Vince McGee's Latin 1 class at Lake Highlands High School in the Richardson Independent School District, students research a project in their target language on the computer. The teacher is available to help students navigate the Internet, but the students themselves must apply what they've already learned in order to interpret the messages provided by the Internet author. The third mode of communication to be mastered by language learners is the presentational mode, which calls for the creation of formal messages, public speaking, or an editorial, for example, to be interpreted by listeners or readers where there is no opportunity for active negotiation of meaning between listeners and speakers or readers and writers. At Rayburn High School in Pasadena, these French 3 pre-AP students are making presentations to their classmates that compare cultural similarities between young people in the U.S. and France.
Robe jaune, robe semi-rouge, robe rouge, c'est ma favorite. The Ralph Lauren, Dior, Chloe.
Current fashion trends for teenagers is a popular theme, and the presenters use the skills of speaking and showing. In this example, as is often the case, more than one mode of communication is occurring in the LOTE classroom. Here, as presenters communicate in the presentational mode, the rest of the class or audience uses the interpretive mode to view and listen to the presentation.
I want the kids to be able to go to a foreign country, check into a hotel, ask for a clean towel, get tickets to the opera, maybe not the opera, but get tickets to something that they're interested in, to be able to use the language. And I think that's where the TEKS have driven us, to make it useful to them.
Understanding the perspective of another culture or how the people view things is key to appreciating their products, the tangible and intangible things the people of that culture create, and their practices, what the people of that culture do and how they behave. In Helen Nakamoto's Japanese class at Taylor High School in Katy, students learn how a simple product in our culture is perceived quite differently in Japan.
Business card, which is what we call meishi, and on the card we have name, not only names, but titles, address and telephone numbers, and the company's name and so forth. And when you exchange business card, you have to show the respect to the person who is giving you the business card, as if this card is a person himself or herself. And you don't put the business card, in your pocket right away. You have to study carefully.
मेरा नाम अरुण है, मेरी बेटी का नाम रागिनी है, मैं ह्यूस्टन में रहता हूँ. Right? These kind of things you will tell.
In his Hindi language class at Bel Air High School in Houston, teacher Arun Prakash makes sure his students understand an important practice or pattern of social interaction specific to the culture of India.
For example, if they want to go to India and they want to greet a lady, they should not extend their hand to shake. That is prohibited. You don't touch a lady in Indian social system. So we have Namaste Ji. So if I have Namaste Ji and I'm adding that into my lesson, then I make sure that I do tell that why it is Namaste Ji and to yourself, why it is not extending. So I explain that at the same time so they know, oh wow, this is the way.
At Cambridge Elementary, our first-grade immersion students are still at it, just trying to handle a few simple phrases. But they're also already learning about and experiencing the culture of their target language.
The fact that they are learning another culture and another language and another perspective on things, I think will help them in many ways to understand other people in our country, especially given the fact that we are a country that is changing demographically. I think it will help them in that respect, and I also think it will help them to understand their own language and their own culture better if they know a second one quite well.
Another important way students and teachers can learn about the cultural products, practices, and perspectives associated with the native speakers of their target language is through study and travel abroad.
As a teacher, I realized immediately that no matter what you can do in the classroom, you can take a very short experience in a foreign country and the kids have such a multifaceted experience about why they should send their students to study abroad. One of the first things I say is, you may think that you're sending your child abroad to learn another language, but the reality is the experience is so much greater. The perspective that a student achieves in even a very short experience it overwhelms them for the rest of their lives. It changes everything.
Still another way students gain cultural perspective about the people who speak the target language is through the use of the technology available in today's LOTE classroom.
I think one of the neat things that has really given us a better idea of perspectives is the use of the internet and email. We have pen pals in Midland and they do a lot of things over the email, and it gives a student an opportunity to truly learn what another student goes through in their lifetime and through their growing up experiences.
For an example of how one teacher exposes her students to the cultural practices and perspectives of some of the native speakers of their target language, we visited Rosalind Moorhead's French 3 classroom at Bel Air High School in Houston. Her classroom is designed to resemble a Parisian cafe, which serves to introduce students to an important aspect of French life.
I stole the idea, as it turns out, but from a teacher who's in Copperas Cove, which is close to Austin, San Antonio, and those teachers who had set up their room just like this and presented a workshop at a conference. And when I came back, I asked Mr. Lawson, who's our principal here, if he would support my putting 24 desks out in the hall and waiting for them to be picked up, and he said, absolutely, go for it. So,
as part of today's lesson, her students act out roles from a story in their video text. The cafe setting is a natural.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux? Quel culot? Vous ne me croyez pas? Il y a des limites. Vous ne pouvez pas parler à moi comme ça. C'est bizarre. Quel culot! Il y a du monde dans la fenêtre.
They took on roles of the people that they have gotten to be familiar with, and situations that may be different from those in the United States. We didn't get to the folks who were doing the cafe scenes, but when they do that, they would ostensibly show how the cafes in France are more a portion of the life of the people, the role that they play and the importance in their lives, and how things are different and how they're the same.
Along with culture, teacher Moorhead stresses communication in her classroom. She believes strongly that the best way to learn a second language is to get plenty of practice speaking that second language.
Ok, alors parce qu'un autre groupe a peut-être la situation d'être au café, vous êtes à table probablement dans une maison.
Je suis l'autre et ton client. Oui.
If they see me in the halls, they speak French to me. You know, I mean, it's just that that's the